I love to think about the mental aspect of it, especially low expectation, high standards, because if you have high standards, you are guaranteed to improve. What I have found though is with these hyper winners, they do have high expectations and it kind of kills them a little bit. It eats at them.
That high expectations, high standards works if you are already capable or very close to capable of like actually winning. And in this case, like being a world champion.
Mhm.
But, you know, let's say you take female or male at the games that came 30th this last year, that's 24 years old. Like if you tried to instill that type of mindset in them, would it work?
I do want to talk about Matt a little bit because I got to hang out with him this past weekend and I met him over Wadapalooza. And now he's someone who, oddly enough, I can consider my friend, you know? And I know that you've known him quite a while. Have you gotten to experience like firsthand what it is that makes Matt Fraser who he is? Like, is there anything off, because I can think of some just this past weekend that I saw.
I think it's a bunch of things. I mean, I think, you know, like anyone who's had like repeated success in the sport, it's probably that like that sweet spot, like a Phelps type where like, you know, they have the body for it or the genetics or the training background, whatever, and then the mindset to match. Right. It's sort of those, it's that sweet spot between the two. You know, Kobe Bryant or whatever, right? Where if they're repeatedly success, and then this isn't me being like, you know, CrossFit's as important as basketball in the Olympics or something, but you know, he's had a similar level of success in this sport as those athletes sort of had in those sports. And yeah, I think you're going to find, you know, it's going to be that sweet spot. Whereas other athletes that maybe have good careers, but not like great all time, they might have one or the other where they're really talented, maybe not the same like mindset or coaching or whatever, or they're like super driven mindset, everything's dialed in, and then you know there's something about them genetically or their training history where it's like you know, a couple of injuries where they didn't have like the longevity or that like that really pinnacle. um yeah, would be like my, that's kind of like a general answer, but
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, especially with the mental aspect of it, which I'm like obsessed with. I love to think about the mental aspect of it, especially after seeing, the Last Dance, the documentary
mm,
on Jordan and the Bulls, the 90s Bulls. I made a video after that basically talking about that winner's mindset. And one of the things that like I kind of alluded to, but I wish I had mentioned more, was I have this quote that I love, and it's low expectation, high standards. Because if you have high standards, you are guaranteed to improve as long as you kind of meet those standards. That's it.
yeah.
And whoever can improve the longest is going to be champion at some point. Like you can't just keep going up and not passing people. What I have found though is with these hyper winners, they do have high expectations and it kind of kills them a little bit. It eats at them. And you can see when they don't do what they think they could do, they get really mad at themselves. And there's a very select few people who can do that, have high expectations and have high standards. So that means when they don't meet the expectations, they go a little bit crazy. There's a very select few of those people that actually end up being winners. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah,
So
and so I think, let me put it to you this way. In my opinion, like I think that high expectations, high standards works if you are already capable or very close to capable of like actually winning, and in this case, like being a world champion.
mhm.
But you know, let's say you take female or male at the games that came 30th this last year, that's 24 years old. Like if you tried to instill that type of mindset in them, would it work? Because they would just wear themselves. It's like
Yeah,
I'm going to
the
win.
argument is it might not, right? Because
I don't. Well, that would be my opinion. Is I'm like, it's kind of like Bulgarian weightlifting. It's good for the country, bad for the weightlifter. Where, if you put if you instilled that sort of mindset into, let's say, 1,000, you know, swimmers, like you're going to win the Olympics or you're a loser. Kind of like you have like high expectations, high standards, high. It's like yeah, like one of them is going to win the Olympics probably, and it's like, see, it works. And then the other 999, they're not going to win because only one wins. And then would they have done as well and they're going to probably burn out because they're like, I got to win, and then they don't win, and then they're like, well, I'll win next time, and that other person just wins again. And do they, are they able to like continue to keep going? Like if that mindset is truly like what it takes, I don't think they would, because it's like there's just so much data in their face saying like, well, you came 800th like 2 years in a row, even though you did get better, because there's another 999 people that are also getting better, and you're kind of like staying in that 800th range. So, but maybe they would have gotten better if they were like high standards, low expectations.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but then would that first place person, have remained first if they had taken on the, surrender the outcome, like high standards, low expectations? Would they still would have won, or would have someone with that high standards, high expectations have beat them?
It's look, yeah. I mean, the thing is, there's so many different routes, and I think a lot of people romanticize, and myself included, the people like Michael Jordan, who are just like outwardly petty and vindictive, and they used that to their advantage. And I think, I will not speak for Matt, but given like the amount of pressure that he would put on himself to compete is definitely unhealthy. And I think he'd be the first person to tell you that it was unhealthy, but it ended up working for him. And I get this sense, now I'm not entirely sure, but I get this sense that once he was out, it was like, like that I can take that pressure that I put on myself off. Maybe for an athlete like you could be as successful, at least, podium or winning the games through a different route. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I don't think that we should just be like, well, you got to be like Matt, you got to be like Jordan, you got to be this cutthroat asshole type. I mean, Matt's not an asshole. You know what I mean?
You have
Matt's to be this type of person.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
I think you can find examples of people like, I don't think Tim Duncan was like that.
Yeah.
And I don't, and like,
I don't think Steph Curry's like that.
Yeah. And they're not Michael Jordan, but as far as like winning resumes, they're pretty close. Like, you know what I mean? Like Steph Curry is the culture of the Warriors. He is a however many time MVP, blah, 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 4-time champion, scoring three, like he's, like, is he, like the thing with someone like Michael Jordan is there's a lot of like timing that goes into like that 6 championships, greatest of all time. Like there's a certain amount of luck and timing that goes into that, but there's definitely like generational, like every decade, let's say in like the NBA, and it's like, Tim Duncan, Steph Curry, LeBron, and I don't think any of those three are particularly that same. And let me put it to you this way: if someone's listening to this and they're trying to apply this in their own life, I think you need to do what works for you. And I think it makes sense to try a bit of everything, whether that's for a week or a month or a competition, and try to implement those things. And, even from a mindset perspective, like I don't enter a 1 at max with the same type of headspace as I do a 5K run.
Right.
I try to enter each competition from a general sense the same way. And there's days like, man, there was 2 days ago where in the afternoon I was so tired, I was like just exhausted and I was crying, and I still trained. Like there's every part of my being was telling me not to train, because I was just, man, I'm so tired, like I can't focus, I'm just feeling really emotional. I just can't, I'm like, I don't know what it is. Maybe I need a nap. And I really, like, I started warming up and I was like, I still don't feel like training. Like, this is stupid. This isn't, and I'm like, no, Brent, you have to train. And I finished my training session, so even though I'm like a surrender the outcome kind of guy, like I'm, still willing to do that sort of stuff twice a week.
I think there are caveats. I think there are caveats to both sides. And maybe we can agree on what these caveats are, but so like, let's say, the surrender the outcome. Okay.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, because you can start to use surrendering the outcome as a cop out. I don't.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not careful.
I can be like, dude, I'm totally a stoic. I don't feel like, training is bad. Like I have to have this huge, no, Brent's like, fuck that. I'm going to do it. Okay. Like every once in a while, you need to put yourself in that position of like, no, you need to be a Mat Fraser or a Michael Jordan. And I think maybe on the other side, somebody who, again, we're just using that as examples. But somebody who is high expectation, high standard, every once in a while, it would be okay if they could lower their expectations, or
Yeah,
like,
and you watch The Last Dance, and like before one of their big playoff games, like Michael Jordan went golfing for 9 holes or 18 holes,
yeah. And he
hanging out with
doesn't
the
just
boys.
golf, bro. He doesn't just golf. He gambles.
Well, he gambles, but
He's
he
gambling
like
hard,
he was
dog.
but he was still like, and it's the same with, it's not like every moment he's shooting a basketball and just like staring at the ceiling doing that. You know what I mean? And it'd be the
Yeah.
same with any high performer. Like, yeah, there's a lot of, so I think sometimes that energy can be romanticized in like a documentary, for
Yeah.
example. And you're like, yeah, but there still are moments where, Michael Jordan was probably playing with his kids for 30 minutes,
Right.
on a Tuesday after training, like those things are still happening, just like they're still happening for me. Like, I'm still just reading a book in the evening, or whatever. And just like I'm sure Mat Fraser did, and,
Yeah.
but there were still moments in competition where I would like chase people down, when I felt like my heart was going to explode. Like, those things are still happening. I'm not like, what, I need to conserve my energy, whatever I can give is enough, and just jog to the thing, like,
Yeah.
so I think there's like, there's an ebb and flow, and certain things people will gravitate towards certain things as maybe like their primary, but you're going to still have, there still has to be an element of joy and fun in some of your training and in some of the competition. And
I think
yeah,
for anyone listening or anyone who either romanticizes either side, I think it's fun to experiment with certain
yeah,
mindsets, just like you would experiment with certain training styles, experimenting with some crazy mindsets and just being like, yeah, that didn't work for me, or maybe I'll revisit it, or things like that. I think are really cool.